on the section of forms of governance in the third day of Unitex 2025. We have this presentation, which I believe is quite important. It is about the next steps in development, the national strategic plan for countries' industrial advance. Unfortunately, we wanted to have, or we were supposed to have five dear presenters, but unfortunately, Mr. Kazemi couldn't really uh, be present. Something urgent came up, and we're doing it with four people. I am honored to invite the panel coordinator, Dr. Seyyed Mohsen Alavi Manesh, Chief of Judicial Powers and Innovation Department. Please have a round of applause. I am honored to invite Amir Younesian, Chief of the Committee we have for Knowledge Enterprises. I am also honored to invite Dr. Barzin Jafartosh Amiri, industrial researcher. Please have a round of applause for him as well. And at the end, I am also honored to have invited Mohsen Mohammadi, the chief advisor to the Minister of Industries. I'd like to also remind you of the topic of today's discussion. It is the next steps in developing the national strategic plan for the country's industrial advancement. I would not take your time any further. I will leave the presenters be. Please, here, Doctor. I'd like to begin with the name of God. I would like to say hi to every attendant here. I am Alavi Manesh, Chief of the Judicial Powers Innovation Department, and in developing this strategy, I have worked closely also with SAMT Institute, and I am happy to be here. In this discussion and also this discussion before, Mr. Jafanejad also told us about the nature and also the reason we have industrial policies. Mr. The recent attempts we've seen towards changing the strategic or changing or modifying the strategic plan we already have drawn up. Considering this exhibition is about or is active in the field of innovation, I'd like to first ask the first question from Mr. Yousefian, who's the chief chairman of the vetting committee we have for knowledge enterprises, and I also ask him what is the role of knowledge enterprises in the development of our country and its technologies regarding industries, and I'd like to also ask what is the rule and what has the rule been so far. Thank you. I would like to also begin with the name of God. I would like to say hello to everyone here, every attendant. I am Younesian from the vetting committee we have in this administration. I'd like to also thank relevant institutes to startup companies in this form of governance. And if I were to answer your question in short, I would like to say that these knowledge enterprises and knowledge companies, especially regarding to big industries and industries or can be the great accelerators of industrial advancement. I believe it is these knowledge enterprises that can increase our capacity for advancement, especially in industries, great industries and big industries. If I were to our knowledge enterprises especially with knowledge-based products, have made or have produced a profit of $500 million, $500 million, and I believe if you consider the resources allocated to them are quite impressive, and if we consider the exports these companies have produced for us, I believe it is a great deal of benefits that these companies have produced for us. I'm also at your service for any questions you might have, but in the recent bills that we've been passing, we are really focusing on the infrastructure of innovation and technology in industries. Uh, we are looking forward or looking into the infrastructures and trying to integrate, to have seamless integration of these new rules and bills for companies and startup companies. We've during the last years in our country, we've had rules and regulations being passed, but because of lack of focus on their enforcement on the private sector, we've not been performing as well as we might have expected. And our offer, what we recommend is to focus more on the infrastructure and also the enforcement of the new laws that are being passed every day, which is very important. I am also at your service, please. Yes, Mr. Jafar Tosh, who's been very active in, who's been working 2 years, who's been active in fields of passing the regulation all in industries, and also considering how you're active in fields of furniture and also technology in households. You've been active and worked in managerial posts and positions. I would like you to tell me what actions have you taken or are being taken in the country in the wide range of things for progressing and developing the country. Very well, thank you so much. I'd like to point out something you were talking about before. We really try to develop a lot of things in countries who are quite behind on innovation and technology. Their focus should be on education, learning, and developing. And I believe their focus should be less on the academic, on the theoretical aspects of things, which unfortunately, because of the narratives and also the way of thinking that is being taught in universities, the focus is not so much on using the knowledge that we have at our disposal. It is mostly focused on, or the narratives taking shape is that we are behind and there's nothing to be done. And I believe we need to expand the narrative and the definition we have surrounding technology. We shouldn't just, we could have technologies in managerial aspects and other aspects. And I believe adapting to these technologies, using imitation or even reverse engineering could be quite beneficial to us. Someone asks a question, it is inaudible. Yeah, it is the same subject as changing paradigm we've seen over the world. But yeah, that is a part of it. Another thing that I like to say is if we even see this in carpentry and furniture industries, even in refrigerators, we don't really have what we expect from a country like ours. And now imagine you want to work on internet in objects in furniture. It is a good thing to do, but unfortunately, it is quite a hasty perspective to have on things. I believe that you need to first address the most urgent needs and then move on to things like internet in things, internet in objects. And unfortunately, the buying power that we have in our country today, in the greater public, I think our industries don't need these things, don't need what we've been focusing on. I believe we need to focus more on the longevity of our products as well, like things we see in Japan and Germany. That's what we need, not the futuristic technology we're focusing on right now. And I would like to also point out the disconnection between governing parties and the private sector and startup companies. And yes, we've seen discussions taking place independently in university and stuff like that, but systematically there is a lack of action we've seen. Like for example, Sharif University. What are these universities training their engineers for? For what industry are they training them for? So I believe that that's a lack of action taking place on the government's part. In the carpentry market and businesses, I believe we've seen a great deal of progress, especially in carpentry and also in clothing. And I believe these progressions did not come through with from internet in things or weird things like that. They came from absolute technology, from the base level of quality that we need. And I believe those are not something we should aspire to go for. And I believe if we connect the industry of the company, the governance, the ruling parties, and knowledge enterprises like universities, that's when we can progress and have real progression in our country. Very well, thank you for your inputs. No, we'll have another questions. We have other questions, but for now we're just introducing ourselves. That's the main challenge. Mr. Mohammadi, Dr. Mohammadi, who's been very active in institutes of collaborative efforts in terms of the government with the people, with the private sector. He's been active in these collaborative efforts. I want to ask him, in action, what efforts and what things have gone through, what have they achieved, what have you seen, and what actions have been taken in the change in policies, I mean. Well, if I were to say so, I would like to first say that there is a great deal of difference between the theoretical aspects of things and also what the practical approach, the practical things. Even countries who've been successful in catching up and getting to developing their industries, all of them have similar attributes in bureaucracy. All of them have had similar attributes in their bureaucracy. Streamlined decisions, providing and presenting opportunities for progression, and also an effective atmosphere. That's for the bureaucracy. And yes, obviously, they didn't really have the level of sanctions that we're going through. But the reality is, in Iran, unfortunately, the bureaucracy that we're living under does not have these attributes. and they need to begin someplace. We couldn't really make radical changes in this industry. As you know, I am a researcher for the parliament that we have. I've written some reports, and based on my experience, at least, uh, we don't really have the capacity for streamlined decisions. We haven't seen enough progression in our parliament and other ministries, especially the economy ministry, to make suggestions of radical changes or even make radical changes ourselves. I believe the status that we're living in, the country we're living in right now, as of right now, doesn't really have the capacity for radical changes. And that was the first point. The second point that I want to mention is it's a long-term game. Countries, it is a long-term game, and stuff takes time. And I also have a book myself about Japan and their progression. They start with carpentry industries, then go to cars and other stuff. They start from labor intensive industries and then move on to knowledge intensive or knowledge based knowledge intensive enterprises industries. Unfortunately, we haven't seen something like that in Iran. Unfortunately, our priority instead of being quality is quantity, unfortunately. And as I was saying about the Japan thing, yes, countries that develop, and we consider them developed countries, act on those developments or go through these developments step by step, which is not something we see today in Iran. And yes, so because of that, I believe that we need to focus more on quality rather than quantity, which is not something I've observed. The important thing for people in power is seemingly the number of startup companies and knowledge intensive companies. But that was one part of it. One thing I like to say as well is we've seen countries do a leapfrog or a sudden development. Like the example in phones with Nokia, who, as you saw, was at some point the best phone to get at a time. And then we had other leapfrog developments like they changed OSs, they changed your perspective of the best phone to get. First, we started with iPhone and then even Samsung. And yeah, that has been the prevailing theory in Iran, that we can do a leap, to frog leap. We can progress very quickly. In terms of nanotechnologies, we really did follow that kind of perspective. And right now, you really hear it as well, even in quantum fields. All of these have had the infrastructure suited for these developments. Like Japan did progress at some fields and actually developed further than America, but that didn't come from nowhere. They had a history of focusing on industries and stuff like that. Unfortunately, right now we're still operating under those assumptions. Like take this for example, China, for example, is investing at least $50 billion every year on quantum industries, but we expect to reach China with an investment like $1 million. I believe in reality it's a bit late for these discussions, and I believe we should be realistic in our approach. In our approach, we should really think like in what fields or could we succeed. I believe that we can succeed or in medical equipments and also other medicine fields and equipment. I believe right now we have a Synogen thing, Synogen equipment, line of equipment. that we are exporting and benefiting off from. Thank you. Mr. Younesian is also experienced in researching for the parliament as well. But because of his active role in Ministry of Knowledge and Ministry of Sciences, on criticism that we like to point out right now is that is these startup companies working in isolation, also both are in isolation with each other, and also the governing party, the governing force. Our hope with this convention and exhibition was these startup companies and these industries that we have agents active in could help us develop. But another that was our hope with this convention. Another point of criticism that we have is the difference between imitation and technology and innovation. One of the parts of the definition of technology is innovation with the aim of benefiting monetarily. So I like to ask. So I will also like to ask in Mr. Pezeshkian's administration, what changes have we observed? What new ideas have entered the discussion? Yes, the previous generations are also partially responsible, but I'd like to know what efforts have you taken? Thank you. But before I begin, I'd like to say that I myself know myself as more of a researcher and from that family and side of things, but I am doing my responsibility from the ministry. I would like to answer my friends and the points they raised before me, and also talk about this seamless integration of strategic plans for the future. I believe that this lack of integration of rules and regulation is expressed exactly the root cause of the problems we're facing today. I believe my friends here are examining the problem from an outside view. Like I would say, I would like to say that knowledge-intensive enterprises have really met their objectives in development and in knowledge intensive development in industries. An example, like when my friends told me, there is a company like Synergene who have done their due part, and there are other companies like Synergene as well who have succeeded in progression in industries. On the topic of getting licenses for knowledge intensive enterprises, before, if in a company it was only about their objectives was only about the conveyance of knowledge, they couldn't really obtain certification for that. But in the recent bylaws we are hoping to pass, an important thing that can happen is that yes, these companies who are only conveyors of knowledge, whether it be from internal companies operating in Iran or from outside of Iran, if they are operating and conveying knowledge, if the principles operating under principles of conveying knowledge, we, in the new bylaws, we will give them the certificate and we will recognize them as a knowledge-intensive enterprise, which is something happening this year. But another unfortunate thing that has happened the large, the knowledge-intensive enterprises, if we were to conduct a list or have a list of their products that they are producing from 1400 or 4 years ago, we haven't really had any new products coming to the market, unfortunately. But we are hoping, with my efforts and also my co-workers, to update the list of products by these companies in different fields like defense, like agriculture and medicine. And these are things that can help our country a great deal. So we are hoping to update them and recognize them in states, in forms of governments, so that they would be eligible for state aid, state sanctioned aid. So the points my friends raise are being there is action taking place for the points and the criticisms my friends mentioned. And another thing I like to stress is infrastructure for developing knowledge-intensive companies and also technology. My friends talked about quantum and AI. Unfortunately, there's a large disagreement in our country today, and in the discourse we have about these is the indecisiveness that we see in ministries. We want to change the way we do things and change priorities, maybe especially in AI, but ministries pressure us to continue on things that are, their development is quite unrealistic, like quantum and other things, and nano as well. So yeah, I believe the only way for us to succeed in fields like this, quantum AI and nanotechnologies, is for ministries to put aside their differences and make a unanimous decision and decisive decision, and put aside their inaction, so that we can progress and also have integrated and seamless management for these and their regulation, for these rules and for these fields and the regulation. Please, thank you. The coordinator of the panel starts speaking. What is your opinion on policy of reviving in industry, and if there is no change, what can we do? Thank you very much. I am very interested in narratives taking shape in industry and also startup spheres that I'm seeing. I really follow them intensively. I really see a 20 or 30-year gap between us and the rest of the world. We've seen in recent years a rise in market fundamentalism. There's a wave of translation of famous writers like Mises or Hayek, and these people really don't even accept a form of governance. And these people were trending 20 or maybe 10 years ago in America and US. If the gap is like 20 right now, if you really try, we can make it to like 15. I believe the reality is that the literature that we see in both policymaking spheres and also in universities, it is quite frail and not much attention is put there. I believe people who really worked on these spheres and worked in these discussions and are quite competent in the literature taking place in those spheres. Maybe less than 10 people are actually competent. I believe it is very important for this literature to be paid attention to. for everyone. Maybe executive positions or translators, even everyone involved should be paying attention to the literature taking shape in these spheres. And also, I'd like to mention something that came up before. Even the location of this place is quite interesting. The place or the location of this place is in the east of Tehran, but industries, most of them are in the west. Even that shows the philosophy and mindset that policymakers are following. The distance between startup companies here and also big tech industries or big industries in the West is quite telling of the mindset. I believe most of the time progress doesn't come from knowledge or hard knowledge itself. It comes from imitation or other stuff. And I believe a big difference, a big change in our general approach needs to be taken or needs to develop for us to develop. An example of it is Chinese engineers come to America and measure the size of a car, a new car, a new BMW or Benz. And I believe technology is like it should be like that. It should be approached like that. First comes imitation and reverse engineering, and then technology. But unfortunately, in our country, like my friend mentioned, right now, as of right now, if the basis of your technology, your advertising is reverse engineering or just teaching or conveyance of knowledge, it is not even recognized as a knowledge-intensive enterprise. So I believe my friends are told that they're going to rectify it, and we hope there's a change in approach. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.